afternoon. Welcome to our show. I'm your host, Melissa Ridgen. Imagine a perfect world where your medical care is equal parts cutting-edge modern medicine and traditional cultural care. Well, it is happening. There's a new report in the Canadian Medical Association Journal discussing how it works, what the benefits are, and how it could reach more facilities like nursing stations, clinics, urban hospitals even. We've got a team that's doing just this, joining us here to chat about how it works and how it could be implemented where you live. Later, we will be talking about racial profiling by police. You'll hear from an Indigenous businesswoman who was detained for suspected drug trafficking, in part because a police officer who'd stopped her noticed that she had cash in her wallet. I mean, how dare somebody be brown and be off their reserve and actually have cash? We'll hear from her and her husband and a friend who has had a similar experience recently. And later on in the show, we're going to talk about Métis settlements. Why does only Alberta have them? Could they be established in other prairie provinces? We're going to talk with somebody who knows. So lots of topics today that we will be putting in focus. We, of course, want you to join our conversation. Our phone lines are open. You can give us a call toll-free at 1-877-647-2786. You can also tweet us at APTN InFocus. So let's get started with Indigenous-led health partnerships in Canada. These innovative models of interprofessional collaboration can exist in healing lodges, clinics, nursing stations, urban hospitals, and new evidence suggests that when you combine this traditional cultural healing and modern medicine, your health outcomes are much better than what you would achieve with either separately. So joining us now to discuss is Elder Dave Crushane, who is the founder and executive director of Turtle Lodge Central House of Knowledge and a member of the Sagkeeng First Nation Health Authority. Dr. Sabina Ijaz, she works at the Turtle Lodge Central House of Knowledge and is a volunteer medical consultant at the Sagkeeng Traditional Healing Center and a family doctor with Pine Falls Primary Health Care Center, which services a large Indigenous population just outside of Winnipeg. And Andrew Hatala, he's an assistant professor in the Community Health Sciences Department at the University of Manitoba. Thank you guys for joining us. So this was exciting, and we're going to provide a link to this report that was in the Canadian Medical Association Journal to our viewers at home. We'll have it on our website after the show, but I would suggest when you hear from them how exciting all of this is that's going on at the Turtle Lodge, you might want to go and read this entire report and see if this is something that you could take and implement where you live. We'll get started. Let's take a look at the Healing Lodge, the Turtle Healing Lodge, so we can see what we are talking about. This is a video from 2018. Elder Dave Crushane shared the vision that he received to create this lodge. Let's take a look.
Suddenly, we came to a place, and what I saw was this lodge that looked like a turtle. And on top of the lodge was an eagle flying. In the sky was really blue. And there was a fire on the east side of that lodge, and I saw the old people sitting around there laughing, joking around. And I could see the woman, working near the lodges. And I could see the children playing. And then on each direction, I saw little turtles. And as the vision, progressed, I saw people coming out of each of those lodges, those little turtles. I saw the red people, I saw the yellow, the black, and the white, all heading toward that main lodge. I went to the elders. And I shared, and the elder said, you were very blessed, to be visited by the grandmother turtle. Now your job, you got what you wanted. You got your vision now.
That's amazing. So you had the Turtle Lodge became reality after that vision in 2002, you said? So can you share with us how do you take modern medicine and combine culturally sensitive healing? What happens?
I think the first thing we got to do is recognize and acknowledge the importance of the leadership of Indigenous peoples. When we received the dream of the Turtle Lodge, much of the work that we have done is to reflect that leadership of who we are as a unique and original people. And we have evolved, with an understanding and a knowledge, that we understand can support the health and wellness of our people. And really what that means in a really quick understanding is a strong connection to the spirit. And I understand that it's difficult for people to understand, you know, the term spirit, because it's not within the conversation, you know, of the issues that we're dealing with every day. And the knowledge and understanding that we have, you know, as a people is very rooted within the land. We are a people, you know, that have always reflected the love that we have for the land. And when we engage in, you know, creating, you know, this document, you know, trying to highlight, you know, our leadership within, you know, the challenges that we're facing today in today's world. You know, prophecy had foretold, you know, that we would be propelled into the forefront of a movement, you know, that would help, you know, humanity come to terms with their behavior. Because what we're seeing is that, you know, what we're dealing with is a crisis of spiritual identity. And the Third Lodge, you know, was given to us, you know, to focus and address the importance of identity. If we look at a lot of the symptoms that the First Peoples, you know, are facing, you know, the root cause of much of those problems is a loss of identity. And because of, you know, the attempt to, you know, to eradicate our way of life, the continued attempt to assimilate us into a society that, you know, does not reflect our view and understanding of life. So we tried to highlight that within the article itself, that, you know, we don't want to be marginalized. You know, we chose to move beyond that marginalization and saying we want a full role of equal participant, you know, to be an equal participant when it comes to discuss, you know, the issues that are affecting our own people. But I know that the dream that we have and our understanding of health and wellness can benefit everyone. You know, there's issues that we're dealing with here globally around the world. And, you know, the knowledge keepers of our people, you know, knew these things were going to happen, you know, because we're a people that have been, you know, educated, you know, from spirit, through our dreams, through our visions. Like the vision, you know, of the Third Lodge, you know, came from spirit. It didn't come from anywhere else. And what we're encouraging, you know, not only our own people, but for all people to consider, you know, that there is a part of our nature, you know, an element that we call spirit. If we don't come to terms with that, we will never find, you know, the original instructions that we were given, how to live, how to behave, you know, how to treat each other, you know, with respect and dignity. So in the healthcare system, you know, we've been able to create something which I believe is really special, you know, within the hospital itself, because we have a voice there now. You know, people are taking us seriously because we're taking the issue seriously also. But we're also making it very clear that if we're going to address these issues, you know, that we're the only ones that are going to be able to provide that guidance and direction for our own people, you know, because it's about decolonizing ourselves, you know, from the very environment, you know, that has taken away that spirit of independence. And what we're encouraging our people to do, to be more independent, to take more responsibility, because we all have duties and responsibilities. You know, as a people, we have all that knowledge. How to be a good parent, how to be a good father, how to be a good mother, how to be a, you know, good individual within your community. And it's by exercising one's own individual leadership, you know, leading their own life. So I'm really excited about, you know, partnering with the university, because we know that we're going to need to reach out to people that are sensitive, you know, to the challenges that we face. We need people to you know, to come forward and support, you know, the dream that we have. And we have a beautiful dream as a people. I think that, you know, it's going to show more and more each day, you know, with issues that we're facing, with such as climate change, and there's others that we're facing. Indigenous people have to be put in a position, you know, of leadership, because we're the true leaders of our homeland. That can't be taken away from us. That's the truth of, you know, we were created here, and being created here, we were given the duty and responsibility of reflecting a leadership also.
Yeah. Dr. Ijaz, you've been working there for 20 years, you've said? Almost 20 years. So I'm curious to know, from your perspective as a doctor, when you hear this explanation, I mean, you've got the background, at least you've been there for 20 years, but this might be, hearing this might be some, new to other people who are practicing medicine. How do you take what we just heard from Mr. Kersane and your, the work that you have done in your field, and you blend the two to make it work for the Indigenous patients that you have just north of Winnipeg?
I think the key message here is Indigenous-led partnerships. We're not talking about integration into a Western system. I think Indigenous-led health partnerships are the only way to really bring out the fullness of the Indigenous knowledge that is there to inform, that can inform our healthcare systems around the world. If we just talk about integrating into the Western system and sprinkling a little bit of culture here and there, the results would be, they may be a little bit effective, but we wouldn't see the fullness of how strong Indigenous medicine really is. If you think about Indigenous medicine as holistic, looking at the body, mind, spirit, and emotion, with the spirit as the foundation, your spiritual identity. Western medicine looks at, it focuses on the physical and a little bit with mental health as well, mainly using medications and surgery, and a little bit of techniques like counseling, but for the most part it has its focus. And if you think about, putting a circle into a box, it's not really possible, but you can put that box into the circle that's way more holistic.
I like that. We have a caller. Nathan, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hey, Nathan, how are you?
Good, yourself?
I'm good, thanks. Did you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I'm Aboriginal myself from Alberta here. I was looking at just in family history, my great-grandparents lived to 107 years old, and they were healthy. What you see now is people living to 60, 70, and they're in bad health. What is going on? And it's kind of it's diet, and we have to, I believe fully that people have to start looking into the Aboriginal medicine, because it is the only thing that's going to keep us alive in this time of day and age. People got to look back to your ancestors, your grandparents, your great-grandparents. They lived for a long time and very healthy people. Now, what's happening with society is that we're getting unhealthy, and it goes back to food. And it's nice to see that people are starting to look at this seriously, because it is a serious thing.
Yeah.
We're getting up there in age, and you got to look for the future generation, the children coming up, the I look at Native children, there's potential doctors in there, and that's what the community's got to encourage these children to pursue and research and take a look at the old knowledge, because it is live.
Well, and imagine if we have doctors, these little Indigenous children who end up becoming doctors, and they have this knowledge that's instilled in them growing up, and then you add this, the modern medicine element to it. Thanks, Nathan, for calling. I'm curious, how do you hear Nathan's comments? What goes through your head?
I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we're facing today is, what many people have, inspired us to do, is to take, much more active role in food sovereignty. And I think for me, in understanding that is to, we have to return back to as much of the traditional foods as we can, and what's really more important, I think, when it comes to the food, is really the medicines that we really need, and we have a lot of healers out there that have been gifted to work with medicines. And given what we're seeing and witnessing in today, we are being advised, by our own knowledge keepers, to really bring back the traditional medicines. And that's one thing we've done, within the hospital, and it's been very welcomed by many people. They keep coming there now asking for that traditional medicine. And the approach, that our people have always taken, has always been more of a preventive. You drink your medicine so you don't get sick.
Right.
I think that, given what's happening right now globally, I'm hearing from a lot of elders, that they're telling the people, get in your lodges and start drinking that medicine, you know, because the best defense mechanism that we have is our own immune system, you know, and if we're able to strengthen that, then we have a much better chance of overcoming a lot of the things that we're dealing with. But certainly, like what we're facing with in terms of our communities, with the symptom of sugar diabetes, you know, it's the food that we're eating, the processed, and we all know that. Everybody knows that, but somehow we don't seem to be motivated, you know, to be able to do what we need to do in order to, you know, to have the foods that we need. Like when we were growing up, everyone had a garden, so everyone was outside. And of course, what we have, you know, in added challenges is that, you know, we're living a sedentary life. You know, so there's a lot of issues here, but I think food, is something that you know, we need to encourage our people to really think about as to, you know, the kind of foods that we need to eat, and they have to be more natural.
Andrew, so I'm curious, what are the tangible benefits? Well, for one, how did you get involved in this? For one, and for two, you know, what are the tangible benefits that we see because of partnerships like this? It's a threefold question. And then how can people take this and do it in their community?
Yeah, I got involved about a year ago or so. Dr. Jazz sent an email out to the Ngomazin Health and Wellness Center at the University of Manitoba. And I responded saying, I know I'm interested to support in whatever way I can. I've been working in this area trying to support in a good way for about 10 years or so. Started in Belize in about 2010, 2011, been working with a group of healers there. And so I've had some experience, some capacity in this area, and reached out really, you know, in humility just to be able to offer whatever resources I can from the university to support. And so we've been talking over about a year or so since then, and this paper emerged as part of that collaboration, as part of that dialogue. And the other questions?
Yeah, and so you know, what are the tangible benefits that you see to partnerships like this, and how can people do this where they live? Because this doesn't exist everywhere. You guys are kind of cutting edge. I'm sure people watching would say, well, I want this in my community. So what are the benefits, and how do you do it?
Yeah, the article highlights we tried to focus on a number of instances where there's Indigenous-led partnerships taking place across the country. There's many more than we could have included in the paper.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah, there are a lot, and I think that was one of the goals, is to bring this forward, because it is such an important area, these kind of Indigenous-led partnerships. But in there's a lot of different ways to think about health outcomes and improvements. Some of the big ones is just around access, people feeling welcome, people feeling comfortable, people feeling like they can go to a space and that it's their space, and that they're not going to experience any kind of racism, any kind of discrimination for being there. That's a big piece. And when these partnerships are led by the Indigenous elders and community, those instances are obviously decreased quite a bit.
Amazing. We have another caller. We'll have to be quick. Jim, are you on the line?
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, Jim. We've got just time for a quick question or comment.
Yes. Hi, Dave, Annie, and Miguel. Jim Ortiz from here in Hinton, Alberta. I'm just a comment. Dave, I just wanted to say, Miguel, I'm one of the keepers of the little boy, and the Madewan, the Healing Lodge, and I just wanted to say that the reason why we ran this way to West, because what you're talking about, the medicine, the healing, even the treaties that happened, the spirit of intent of treaties to help our visitors, our relatives that came here, for us to share that pie with them. Because when they came here, we were the ones that helped them with their food and the medicines that they needed, and so on. Like, you know that we were the fur traders, suppliers, and that's how Canada was built. But we always relied on our culture. We always rely on our medicines, like what you talked about. That's why the healing is very important with the land. We look after the land, the turtle itself. That's why we have plans. Like if I have a bear, I'm loon clan, if I have a medicine for me, mango maskike, and if you're a bear clan and you have Beirut. So this is how we used to trade. So we used to use our pipes to go and get that medicine from a bear clan, and maybe the wolf clan will have a wolf medicine, and this is what they call...
Jim, I gotta cut you off. We're late for taking our commercial break. I thank you for calling in and adding that to the conversation. When we come back, we're going to switch gears to racial profiling and an incident that might surprise you and that happened in Winnipeg over the course of the weekend. Stay with us.
Call in toll-free at 1-877-647-2786. Like us on Facebook on our APTN News page. Follow or tweet us at APTN InFocus. And send your thoughts to infocus@aptn.ca.
Welcome back. Profiling is a problem across the country, whether you are profiled at a bank, a restaurant, a retail shop, but it's a whole other level when the person who is profiling you has a badge and a gun. A damning report out of Montreal confirmed what many suspected, that Indigenous women there are subject to random police checks a lot more than any other minority group. Our APTN's Lindsay Richardson brings us this report.
Right on the heels of the Viens Commission, a new independent report reveals what many minority groups say they already knew, that Montreal police are influenced by a systemic bias, often stopping Indigenous women for random searches at rates exponentially higher than their white counterparts. Penned by professors from 3 Quebec universities, the report synthesizes 3 years of police check data, while also noting that some searches were conducted but unreported by municipal police force, the SPVM.
Police officers get up in the morning, they simply want to keep the city safe. Sometimes they may do it in a way that maybe can have certain biases that are caused by a system in place more than the individuals. So that's what we have to address, but it's a very, very delicate balance.
While addressing the report's findings during a press conference Monday, Police Chief Sylvain Caron said while it does indicate obvious disparities, the report ultimately reflects a lack of policy rather than a problem with racial profiling. According to the 164-page document, Black and Indigenous people living in Montreal are 4 to 5 times more likely to experience random street checks by police officers, and Arab Montrealers are twice as likely to be stopped. But Indigenous women make up the demographic most targeted by police, stopped 11 times more often than any racialized group. In response, Mayor Valerie Plante called the report shocking.
This data do not represent the city we want. A city where every citizen feels safe.
Overall, the trio of researchers made 5 concrete recommendations, calling on Montreal police to identify their blind spots and take corrective measures. Meanwhile, Caron says he will be meeting with officers later this week to discuss the findings and will allow future studies in hopes of enforcing new protocols by March 2020. Lindsay Richardson, APTN National News, Montreal.
This past weekend, a social media post detailed what should have been a routine traffic stop in Winnipeg escalated into accusations of drug trafficking for an Indigenous woman here. Tracy Thomas is here to share what happened. Her husband, Doug Thomas, is here too. There's a twist to this messed up tale as well that we'll get into. I want to start with you, Tracy. Can you just give us a little rundown? You're out minding your own business in Winnipeg.
Just went out grocery shopping, decided to drive for maybe the second time in 10 years without my husband. So I noticed the police cruiser in the back and their lights came on right away. And
you weren't speeding?
Nothing, seatbelt on, speeding, and just going to the grocery store, and they pulled me over just 2 blocks from my house. I pulled out from the back lane of my home, and that's where they seen the sirens come on. I pulled over right away and asked them, the officer that came to my window, asked him, what's the problem? And gave me no cause, no reason for the stop. And he just said, your license and registration. So my husband and I, we've been renting cars for the last year. Yeah, it's just better for us because we put so much mileage on vehicles. with our
because
work.
you guys, we should qualify here, you have businesses, and
I work full-time.
You work full-time, have a business, and do a lot of traveling back and forth between Peguis First Nation and the city of Winnipeg.
Yeah, so my license read Peguis First Nation, which is my home community. And we have dual residence here in Winnipeg for work and other stuff. So we just commute, and my mom and dad live in Peguis yet, so and they haven't been well, and I've just been driving back and forth a lot.
And it just makes sense for you guys to have a rental vehicle. Who cares anyways? Like, if you want to have a rental vehicle, you're entitled to have a rental vehicle.
But this is the whole, I didn't tell my husband till today, the whole interview, the whole incident lasted like 20 minutes. And what I posted on social media was way more than what happened. So
no, there was way more that happened than what you posted.
Than what I posted. On
so
social media.
just let's try to condense it down for our audience. You get pulled over without cause. You didn't say you were speeding. You ran a red light. Nothing.
No.
Asked to provide your driver's license and registration. All of that is fine. It's a rental vehicle. Then he takes issue with why does it say Peguis and you're here?
Yeah.
Like as though people aren't supposed to leave the reserve,
I know,
right?
Yeah. And then I opened my wallet for my license, and I noticed the cash in my wallet. But my husband and I we got lucky the night before, and we just
went to the casino.
Yeah, I went to the casino and we won. So we just didn't have time to deposit. Totally legit. So then it just looked, I don't know how it looked to them, but whatever, I was totally complying.
Yeah.
And they just said license and registration, and I said I said what? And they didn't give me no reason, and then they just said what's with the water bottles in your car? And I said, that's all I drink, officer. And I was just complying with every question they asked. He was getting angrier and angrier. The more she complied.
Really?
But I was being nice. I'm just being myself the way I am now, and just talking normal.
And it seemed to annoy him.
It seemed to really annoy him.
Here's this lady who dares leave the reserve in a rental car and have money.
Yeah, and that's what happened.
And isn't up in his face when he's bugging her about
I'm totally nice and compliant, but it's just getting him more and more mad. So the second officer, he said, can you please, he says, ma'am, we're putting you under arrest for suspicion of drug trafficking. After I said my whole story to him.
After about 15 minutes.
And after me opening my wallet, he must have seen I had to pull up my license, right? So he seen the money. So then that's what happened, and he just said,
he was going to handcuff you at the time.
Yeah, so then I was saying, really? What? No way. And I kind of laughed because it's just how I am.
Just the nervous laughter.
Yeah. And so I just opened the door, and then
I've got a couple of aunties like that.
Yeah, so I said, what, officer? I opened my door, and then right away he felt maybe me being defiant, and then he started getting madder, him and his partner. So I just said, ma'am, two things can happen. You can let me search your vehicle, or I'm going to put you under arrest for suspicion of drug trafficking. So I said, no way. So I laughed again, the way I am. And I just said, no, officer. I said, just search the car. I said, I have no problem, nothing to hide. And then that's when they found nothing. The second officer kept looking in my car. The officer said that was behind the vehicle with me. He said, did you find anything? No. Did you find anything? No. Did you find anything? No. So they were looking for something. I don't know. So I just said, officer, I'm totally upstanding citizen, I said. And sorry for the way it looks, I said, but
why
thanks
would
for doing
you say
your job.
Your story? Why did you say your story for the way it looks? You're not doing anything.
I know.
Isn't that they make you feel like you?
But as soon as I seen him get angry, I made a snap decision to be compliant because I knew how bad it could have turned.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What was going through your head, how bad this is, how bad it could get?
As soon as I seen the lights come on, I knew I was being profiled. So
that soon, hey?
Yeah, soon. Because I knew right away what they were looking at. And right away I tried to blame myself. My hair was in rollers. I was wearing my PJs, my house shoes. And then my workers were saying, don't do that to yourself. You can't just... But that's just how I give everyone the benefit of a doubt. But it happened to me, and I can't imagine how much people it can happen to. And it's not just about me. It's for my colleagues' children that got stopped that I know of.
Or children?
My son, we have a 27-year-old, and it's for our children. And they're the ones that are not getting acknowledged. You know, this isn't coming to light. I don't know why I got so much recognition.
Now, and it happens to you. Like, what will it take to make sure that the next generation doesn't go through this? I want to go. Sorry. This is an interesting twist that I was telling you about. So, adding insult to injury, Doug, just a year ago, received commendation from this exact same police force for being an exemplary citizen after intervening in an attack on a homeless person here in Winnipeg. Our friends at CTV covered the story. I just want to take a look at, Doug, what you did to get this award of commendation.
Early Saturday morning, Thomas was at a drive-through restaurant when he says he saw a homeless man being harassed, then assaulted by two young men at a bus shelter on Portage Avenue. Thomas says he had to do something.
And they were kicking him and kicking him. And at that point, my wife started to scream, and I just instinctively just jumped out of the car and I ran there.
Thomas says when he went to move the young men away from the homeless man, one of them started punching his head and using nails on his eye.
If that was me and someone was kicking me like that, I would want someone to intervene the same way I did. So I would do it all over again. I don't regret it at all.
So, Doug, you received from the Winnipeg Police Service this Good Samaritan Award, basically. I want to ask before we get into other questions, how are you doing now after that attack? Do you have any lasting effects from that?
Yeah, I have, I don't know if you could see this, but I have a tube that went in behind my tear duct, and it goes up into my upper eyelid and around. And it was, I think, a 2-hour surgery to reattach my eyelid with the tear duct. And it still has some lasting effects on my eyes, yeah. It comes up in the morning and it causes it leaks and drips and just the anxiety and trauma that it's caused me is very traumatic experience.
I can only imagine. So for stepping in and stopping that attack on that homeless person who was asleep in a bus shelter and he was attacked by two men, the Winnipeg Police Service say, wow, I mean, good work. You get a certificate of appreciation from them. Then you hear this. What happened with your wife? What was going through your head immediately following this?
I was angry. I was very angry and frustrated because if I was there, I wouldn't have been so calm and I wouldn't have been so compliant as her. I would have been a little bit more aggressive, and I tend to mouth off if I feel like I pick my battles, and this is justice. Like I stand for what's right, and I don't stand for that. And I think it's outright bullying, what the police officer did, and how he treated my wife. And not only if it wasn't my wife, like I have a child, he's 27-year-old, and he's been pulled over numerous times, and same thing, racial profiling. You've been speeding, you were going too fast, but he knows he wasn't speeding, and he's never been charged. But these times that he's been pulled over just because of how he looks and maybe what he's driving.
Yeah.
And it is a problem, and I got to stand up for our people and say that it's got to stop. We need to have corrective action taken against these officers that do this, and make sure that doesn't happen to our people, and make sure it doesn't affect us. Because if she fought back or even got a little bit compliant, they would have arrested her, and then they would have accused her of resisting arrest, or who knows what would have happened. We hear about it all the time.
We hear about it all the time.
People getting beat up. Friends of mine, their children getting beat up by the police for doing nothing wrong.
And this isn't just, we're not just talking about Winnipeg police. I mean, this happens across the country.
Yeah.
We're certainly not trying to single out one police service.
And it's not everybody. I don't want to paint the whole police force with this.
Exactly.
I really don't want to do that, because there's a lot of good police, a lot of upstanding citizens, but there are some bad apples that will do things like this to our children and try to intimidate them and try to bully them into situations where they appeared to be wrong, and we see that with J.J. Harper being shot. These things are still happening, and it's got to stop. It's to be very angry.
You said, Tracy, when we had been discussing this, that there was an embarrassment, a shame that you felt.
Yeah, because there was at some point when he told me I was under arrest, I was stepping out, I could see him pulling out his handcuffs, and he was calling a backup police officer.
He did call for a backup female police officer.
He called for a backup police officer, female police officer, to come and search me. So then right away I knew, okay, that was my snap decision there, was just to comply with everything.
Yeah.
And I just answered every question, and it was just getting him madder and madder till they couldn't find anything in the car, and they must have had me pulled over for like a good 20 minutes or so.
And they ended up finding nothing. Presumably the female officer came, patted you down, look, there's nothing.
No, there was no female officer. They canceled it.
Okay.
As soon as the officer didn't find anything. As soon as he saw I saw the handcuffs, I said, there's no need for that, officer, I'm compliant. So he put them away, so, which is nice. So then I stood beside him in the back of the car, and that's when the other officer was searching.
How did it end? So when they found nothing, were they...
They had just let me go.
More polite after? Like, sorry to have bothered you?
Yeah,
she asked for a reason.
was.
Why did you pull me over? And they still never give her a reason.
And they still never... And they said, you can go. And I said, sorry. I said, if I look suspicious, I said.
And why
and
did
you apologized again?
So angry too.
Why?
I know. I don't know why, because I have no idea. I just didn't want to be arrested.
I have my auntie. If my Auntie Bab's watching, you're like my Auntie Bab. My Auntie Bab would have handled us the exact same.
But that's how our society is. It's we've been... We normalize it, and it's happened to us so many times that a lot of times we don't even say anything.
Yeah.
And we're lucky that our voice was loud enough that it was brought into attention, that it made national news.
Yeah.
And how many times are there other people out there who don't have the voice that we have, and in the position that was able to raise this issue up to the stature that it has? It's gone national now because of that police officer's racist actions and racist profiling.
Has this happened to you guys? Not with police necessarily, but have you felt that that you were profiled? At a restaurant. We hear restaurants, retail shops. Sometimes have you guys felt this before?
Yeah, we feel it all the time.
It's different though if it's somebody with a badge and a gun, though.
Yeah.
Right? Like that feels different than
really
the waitress
different.
at Smitty's or.
I was shaking the whole time. Like, I'm a person that's very not aggressive. Everyone that knows me, I was just so scared. But I just answered every question. And I knew I was being compliant, but I just couldn't get over how upset they were getting.
We talked to we reached out to the Winnipeg Police Service for comment on what had happened on the weekend. They said that they do not comment on social media posts, but they provided information on how Tracy could file a complaint, which I can share that with you. Here, take a look. That's from the police service. We do not comment on social media posts. But he did say you can file a complaint right here at that website. Are you guys are you going to pursue that? Are you going to file a complaint?
I decided after today and talking to my colleagues and the social media outcry that yes, I am going to file a complaint. You were
saying you were probably going to, and I was wondering if you. Yeah.
After we leave here today, we're going to go file a complaint.
Yeah.
Because I said it's much
us.
bigger than us.
Yeah.
It's our kids, right? And it's still happening. So.
Well,
I don't know what it'll do, but the complaint will be there, and
don't apologize for it when you go to file the complaint. I feel like you're going to be that girl, Tracy. I'm sorry, I have to file this complaint. Sorry, do we have a quick caller? Beverly, did you? Clinton, are you there? Very time for just a really quick comment or question.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, go.
Hello there.
Hey.
Hi, Clinton. Hi there. I'm just calling because I had a police member. We have regional police out here, and the cop come and assaulted me, and I've been trying to get him a charge for assault, and they tell me there's an investigation going on. And I've been updated like 3 different occasions with 45-day letters that nothing's been happening with the regional police. He even got promoted to RCMP in Muscatcheese, another community in Alberta. So
thanks for that, Clinton. Well, best of luck with. I don't know how the investigations
how do we hold
go.
Them accountable? That's the thing. Is
the police are investigating.
They're investigating themselves. So how do we hold them accountable? So what do we do? It's almost like how do we bring corrective action so this doesn't happen again?
Well, I think that by doing what you guys do, and every time it happens, call it out. As soon as, when people realize that this happens, maybe it will make them look at an Indigenous person or any person of color differently, to think like, am I racially profiling them, or are they legitimately doing something that's suspicious that requires my action, right? And maybe and then separate from police too, if we call it the racial profiling in restaurants, in businesses, maybe that's, as long as it keeps getting called out, people will be less likely to do it themselves, right? Maybe? I don't have the answers. I thank you guys for joining us, taking time out of your day to come here and share that with our audience.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. We have to take another break. When we come back, Métis settlements. Alberta has 8. How come the rest of us don't have any? And where can we get them from? We've got somebody who knows. Stay with us.
Métis settlements in Alberta. From their beginnings to the government taking back some of their land and where they are today.
Welcome back. Let's go to social media now with our social media editor, Jesse Andrushko, to hear what some of you are saying about today's topics.
Thanks, Melissa. Our viewers have a lot of interesting comments on Facebook Live. From Kanzi, we need our youth involved in the traditional ways. How do we get them more involved? This is on the topic of medicine. From Morningstar, the land has food and water supply chain, medicine and other supplies. Steve says, scientific community has a very narrow view when it comes to Indigenous knowledge. That is why the world is in the state it is today. Gloria says, bring back farming. On the topic of RCMP profiling, Artemis says it happens way too frequently. And lastly, again from Morningstar, predictive policing is racially profiling. If you'd like to add your opinion to our topic of conversation, here's how. Join our conversation now. Call in toll-free at 1-877-647-2786. Like us on Facebook on our APTN News page. Follow or tweet us at APTN InFocus. And send your thoughts to infocus@aptn.ca.
This week on APTN National News, video journalist Chris Stewart takes a 3-part look at Métis settlements in Alberta. That province is unique in that it's the only one that has recognized Métis land rights within these 8 settlements. For 80 years, they have been home to generations of Métis. Part 1 and 2 of this Perspective series ran on Monday and Tuesday, and Part 3 airs tonight. Let's take a peek from Part 1.
In 1932, 5 men formed the Métis Association of Alberta and fought to have their own land. In 1939, they succeeded, and the East Prairie Métis Colony was started. In all, there were 12 Métis settlements created across the province, mostly in the north and not close to any large city. Not all the land was equal. Some had better soil than others. Some had lumber or oil. In the 1950s, 4 of the settlements were taken back by the Alberta government.
We had our members who were taken out of those communities. They were forced at gunpoint in some cases to leave their homes. The minute they were out of the home, those homes were burnt in front of them. We were told back then, the members were told, this land can't sustain you. And so they moved from, in most cases, very rich in agriculture capabilities as well as rich in the ability for oil and gas production, and moved to communities that had less opportunity.
The Métis Settlement Act was implemented in 1989, giving the settlement more power to self-govern. The settlements had sued in 1968 for lost revenues. It took over 20 years, but they were awarded $310 million in 1990, paid out over 17 years. Today, the president wants the federal government to step up with funding that he says they are obligated to after the 2016 Daniels decision by the Supreme Court, which ruled that the federal government has a fiduciary duty to Métis and non-status Indians.
Thank you very much, Province of Alberta, for stepping up and being stepdaddy. That when nobody else wanted to take on responsibility for us, you did. And you created a Métis Settlement Act and helped move us forward. But the DNA testing was done, and it was done in 1996 in the Supreme Court of Canada. Federal government, you have the fiduciary responsibility. You're daddy.
I'm joined now by one of those two sharp-dressed men from Chris Stewart's pack, Blake Desjarlais. He is a member of the Fishing Lake Métis Settlement and Director of Public and National Affairs for the Métis Settlements General Council there in Alberta. It's the governing body of Alberta's 8 federated Métis settlements. Blake, thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, Melissa. I'm happy to join you.
I've got lots of questions for you, but we might have to narrow some of them down. We can stay here for hours and ask you questions. So I think many of our audience are probably like me, thinking, you know, when you think of Métis, you think of the Red River settlement in southern Manitoba, but the Mecca for the Métis might really be Alberta, because you guys are really the only ones that have these recognized federated settlements. You got some bragging rights there?
Well, I think that we're definitely proud of what we have here, but like anything else, I think, and the same situation of many Indigenous people, where we have a great deal of strengths. One of those strengths is our land, but we also have a lot of needs. And some of those needs stem from issues of infrastructure to housing shortages to clean water, but definitely very proud to have the land holdings we do.
Why aren't there more Métis settlements in Alberta, and why aren't there any in Manitoba and Saskatchewan?
That's a brilliant question for so many good reasons, and I have to really rely on some of the history and narrative that Canada tells, and some of the positioning between the province and the federal government following the rebellion. So most Canadians, most Métis people know who Louis Riel is. We start that narrative often at that point in 1869, when there's the confrontation between Canada's Sir John A. Macdonald and his project for a railway, and the Métis people's position as owners of land. Stemming from that initial battle in Red River, it produced the Manitoba Act. The Manitoba Act, of course, the creation of the province of Manitoba and its constitution, provides some very clear indication within the Manitoba Act for Métis. It says 1.4 million acres of land will be allocated to the children of the Métis. So that's the first point. Of course, we move then to Saskatchewan in 1885, and another resistance takes place in Batoche. Our ancestors fight very hard there again, and unfortunately are dispersed and displaced once more. Out of all that, the conversation of land is never really answered. Canada's answer during the time of the Manitoba Act was to designate a process of script. So many Métis are also familiar with script. It's kind of, in some ways, Canada's mini treaties. In lieu of a treaty agreement with Métis, who did not adhere to some of the historic treaties, were allowed to take scrip. And scrip was Canada's way of extinguishing Métis title to land. Of course, that was done individually and not as a collective settlement. And in 2013, the Manitoba Métis Federation took a challenge against the province of Manitoba and Canada to answer that question. Have they fulfilled the obligations to the Métis in the Manitoba Act? No. As a matter of fact, most Métis people have lost their lands that were designated through script. And that's no different than the Métis in Alberta. In Alberta, we've seen a huge population of Métis. Not only were the original inhabitants Métis, but we started to see an influx of our relatives from Saskatchewan and from Manitoba following those rebellions. So the Métis problem, quote unquote, moves, I guess you can say, to Alberta, and is today the largest population of Métis still. At the time when Alberta was founded in 1905, the Métis population represented a huge population, maybe even a majority in some districts. And so that, with the fear of what was called the Natural Resources Transfers Act of 1930, put the Métis, I guess, alarm bells off. And they said, whoa, the government is about to transfer another great swath of land out of our control. And so our leadership in the early 1920s gathered in Fishing Lake Métis Settlement. One of my own ancestors, actually, Charlie Delorme, had gathered over 500 Métis people in Fishing Lake and had started a petition. The difficulty, however, was our people weren't very literate in terms of Canada's political system. So we had brought the help of a gentleman named JFD on. And he was a school teacher in the Inuit First Nations and a very good friend of the Métis. He went on to lobby the government for us by writing letters and meeting with officials to state our problem and our case. Later on, 4 more gentlemen would join him, which would become known as the Famous Five or Big Five, which include famous names like Jim Brady and Malcolm Norris. These 5 men would go on to ask the provincial government with petitions to strike a commission, a royal commission in Alberta. This would go on to be the first commission in Alberta to investigate the condition of half-breeds, and our health and education and social welfare. That process resulted in the recommendation in 1936, when the report was tabled with the provincial government. It said you must set lands aside. You have to imagine Alberta, faced with a very huge social economic problem for Métis, had an easy solution. And it was a common solution the Métis shared with Alberta. So it was a matter of convenience in many ways. The government could have allocated more money to health, education, housing, and things like this, but they chose to side with the recommendation of the Métis leadership at that time and recommend land. And we said we can do it ourselves. We don't need social handouts. What we need is land so that we may be able to build houses, farms, schools, churches, things like that. Sure, please.
Sorry. No, I appreciate this history lesson, and I had a bunch of other questions. We've run out of time. Thank you so much for joining us. The final episode of Chris Stewart's Métis Settlement airs tonight on APTN National News. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you back here next week.